Common Sense, thank you so much for joining us today. If you haven't already, please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. Today, let me tell you, this is Black Music Month, and I am so excited to introduce to you some of my family members from Black music. Charlie is at Warner Brothers, and he is knowledgeable about everything behind the scenes of music. For those of you artists who are musicians, he knows about licensing and contracts and sales and merchandise, and he is the man. Welcome, Charlie.
Hey, Charlie. Great to be
Thank
here.
you for joining us.
Great to be here.
And next, I want to introduce you to the famous Pat Shields. Pat Shields, if you're in Black music, you know Pat Shields. And she has been in music for over 20 years. Please help me welcome Pat Shields. Thank you, Pat. Thank you so much for joining us. And this is my first time actually meeting you.
Exactly.
Chris Jones has done everything. He has done promotion for umpteen years, as they say in the record business. Umpteen years. He's been around forever. And if you scroll down on the page, you'll see everywhere he's been, because we love him so much. Please help me welcome Chris Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Yes! Woo!
Thank you.
So it's like having over 150 years of the business right here, all the experience. So I want to talk to you about how you started in the business.
Wow. After I graduated from college, I went to a radio station, WNEW AM in New York, and at that time they still had vinyl, and I worked with all the DJs, so I was responsible for getting the playlist from the music director, and then going into the music library, pulling each song, stacking it, so that when the DJ came in, all he had to do was grab his stack and go in. He knew what he was going to play, because he didn't have a choice of what. I think he had one song per hour that he could play on his own. Everything else was in a rotation that he had to stick to. I handled the fan mail for all the DJs.
Wow.
And at that time, I'm young, and I didn't know that I was working with all these famous people, because it was a MOR station,
Right.
so middle of the road, and they were playing Shirley Bassey and Barbra Streisand and Frank Sinatra, and I worked with, people are sending fan mail to William B. Williams, and I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
Julius Erosa, Gene Clayton.
These were legends.
These were legends, and I had no clue. The way I grew up, you don't call adults by their first name. So I'm being very Mr. Clay, Mr. Wick, and they're like, no, call me by my first name. And at this point, I'm not seeing myself as an adult, because I'm just graduated from college, so it was just funny. From there, all the people from the record company would come in and try to promote their records, and that's how I got the first taste of a record company and what they do. And seeing it in Billboard, and I really didn't have an interest in staying in radio, but I said, oh, maybe I'll try a record. And I happened to tell the guy at Atlantic, hey, if you ever have any openings, I'd like to come over. And he then told me, like 2 days later, there's a job opening as a secretary. I went to college. I'm not going to be a secretary. I'm putting my nose in the air. And they said, you better go over there and get your foot in the door, which is what I did. And I moved up and stayed there like 13 years.
Wow. At Atlantic.
Atlantic.
Wow.
Yeah. And then segued over to Warner Brothers in LA.
So you left Atlantic in New York and came out to LA and worked at Warner Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, Charlie, you're up. So what got you into the record business?
I went to San Francisco in 1967, not knowing it was going to be the summer of love. But I hitchhiked out there from Chicago. I was 17.
Wow.
I got a job as a carpenter, and I was working for a guy, and we were putting in sneeze trays.
What is that?
Well, at that point in time, salad bars were coming into vogue all over San Francisco in the Fern bars. We would go into a restaurant and say, wow, you need a sneeze bar. And they'd say, what is that? And I'd go, well, people could slobber all over this salad if you don't drop a plexiglass right over the top of it. As soon as we'd explain it, they'd go, oh my God, when can you do that? And we'd say, right now. And
Wow.
we'd go out into the truck and we'd cut all the stuff and put it in. I was doing that one time, and an older gentleman called me over and asked if I knew what an 8-track tape was. And I said, yes, I'm familiar with it. He goes, could you make an 8-track case that would hold a whole bunch of them? And I said, yeah, sure. I'm like, how big? We're sitting in a restaurant, and he points outside the restaurant, and he goes, not the first stoplight, the one caddy corner. So, this is like a 70-yard piece of equipment he was talking about. And we said, yeah, we could do that. We'll have to build it off-site, modular, and install it. But yeah, we could do that. And that gentleman was Russ Solomon, and he was opening up his second store at Columbus and Bay in San Francisco.
And the store was?
Tower Records.
Okay.
So I put in the 8-track cases at Tower Records, and while I was putting them in, I was selling records to people as they came up with it. I mean, anybody with a long ponytail, they figured I worked there, so they would just ask. And he hired me.
That's amazing.
So I started at Tower Records. And I worked for him for a couple of years, and then I got a job at night working at the Fillmore West.
Wow.
And virtually everybody played at the Fillmore West at that point. And I was in the music business.
Wow. So, Chris.
I'd been out of school, living in New York, born and raised there. And my mom had several beauty shops, one of which at this particular time was a year after I'd graduated from Ohio University. And at that time, wanted to be a lawyer. I took one LSAT test and decided I didn't want to be a lawyer because I did so miserably. So in the meantime, I'm helping my mom out in one of her stores, and there was a guy, a disc jockey. His name was Hal Atkins. He went on the air at WWRL in New York City, and his name on the air was Happy Hal, a housewife's pal. And he was just...
I don't remember him, but...
Oh no, he was alive and kicking back in this.
Wow.
We're talking back in the 60s. He was way. He was more my age than he was my mother's age, quite honestly. But he developed a crush on my mom. Now, this store was literally a half a block from the Apollo Theater. So there were acts coming in all the time, getting their hair done, getting wigs done. And one day, Martha Reeves, as an evangelist, came in. She picked up a wig, and she threw a $100 bill up on the counter and started walking out. My mother said, no, you have change. She said, I don't have time to change. I got a show to make. And I'm standing there, wow, what kind of money does she make? Coming back to Hal notices that I'm getting a little interested in what this music business was about. And I get a call one day, and he says, how would you like to work for Florence Greenberg at Scepter Records? And I go, wow, I've heard that name. I didn't know, all I knew at this time was how to go into a record store, ask the guy if I could play it on a phonograph machine without scratching it, and then decide to or not buy it. That's about as much as I knew about the music business. So here I am being asked if I want to work for a record company, which I knew about, not a great deal. But I said, Hal, there's no way I'll get a job like that. I have no background. He says, that's exactly what they're looking for, someone with no background. Because so much has been going on in the business, they want to bring in some new people that don't do things the old-fashioned way. So I'm going to set you up with an interview. I get a call from a guy by the name of Marvin Schlachter, who was an executive vice president at the time. His secretary calls, who incidentally, the lady's name was Inga Freed. She had been married to Alan Freed,
Wow.
a very famous disc jockey, way back in the day. So I don't know that at this point. But anyway, I get this call. We set up the interview, and I get all sharp and everything. I just cannot wait. Meanwhile, I'm telling my friends, I may be in the music business. They tell me, man, the music, you know how much you'll make? They start you off at $1,000 a week. I said, really? Whoa, I cannot wait. I'm on 52nd Street and Broadway, and I step on a guy's foot who had on cowboy boots, and when I looked up, it was James Brown. Scared me to death because I'd heard these horrible stories how James could be not the nicest guy you'd want to meet. And he held my arm and he said, everything is going to be fine for you today. Don't worry about it. I took that as a sign. I'm getting this job. Oh man, James Brown told me I'm getting a job. I go to the place I'm told to go to, and it's a luncheonette. I don't even know if some people watching this will even know what a luncheonette was back in the day.
Yes.
For all intents and purposes, it was a kind of fancy place to go have lunch. Not even fancy, malt, hamburger, and that was
A
basically
little
it.
diner.
A diner. Yeah, you got it. So I walk in. Incidentally, the place is right next to what is now the Ed Sullivan Theater. It wasn't even called that back then. So I go in, and I'm like, man, this doesn't look like a place that record people would eat. All this money I'm thinking I'm getting ready to make. And I see this guy slouched over at the counter, looking very impatient. And I'm on time now. So I kind of look around. I don't see anybody that looks like they're record people. So I walk over to this guy. I said, would you happen to know who Marvin Slack is? He said, yeah, I do. I'm Marvin Slack. I said, wow, how lucky. I said, well, were you waiting for us to have a table? He said, no, we're not going to be here that long. So I got like a little offended and said, oh. He says, look, I don't have a lot of time. I don't have a lot of time, so I want to know, when can you start? And I said, wait a minute, start? Aren't you going to ask me questions? He said, I just did. When can you start? So I'm thinking to myself, something's not right here. This doesn't seem like it's going according to Hoyle here. So he's got that New York kind of vibe about him, and I'm like, I don't want to say the wrong thing, don't want to say too much, but I'm thinking, he just told you, you're not going to be here that long, you better make this work. So I said, well, maybe if I'm not being a little overbearing here, can you tell me how much I'm going to make? He said, well, I was thinking 150. I said, 150? He said, what's wrong? You want 125? I said, no, we'll do that. And I got hired right then. I started a week later. As a matter of fact, I started working for Florence. It was 2 days after Martin Luther King was assassinated.
Wow.
I will never, ever forget it.
Wow.
And just to kind of add a little flavor to it, I knew nothing the day that I started there. As I sit here today, it was, without my plan, the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because I had no idea what was ahead of me.
I want to introduce our last and most wonderful panelist. Her name is Sheila Coates. She is the founder and owner of BYOB Unlimited.
I come from radio initially. So I was in San Francisco, on the Bay Area, at a radio station called KSOL. Mm-hmm. And KSOL at the time was the #1 urban station. And I did promotions. And I would always work with the artists that came into the radio, and they had no clue sometimes where they were. They would be like, oh, I'm so glad to be in Oakland. No, you're not in Oakland, you're in San Francisco. Oh, I'm so glad to be in LA. No, you're not in LA, you're in the Bay Area. And I would laugh because these guys would bring them in, but they'd be going from place to place and really didn't work with the artist. And the artists wouldn't be together. Sometimes I'd have to give them my lipstick to put on them. And I'm like, I think I can do this. That's what really spurred my thoughts about getting into the music business. And I remember one of the promotion guys said to me, oh, you won't be in that business because you don't know anybody. And you've never done it before. And I'm like, oh, dude, you really don't get it. Like, you tell me that, I'm getting in the business. So I flew down to LA on my own dime. And I called some people because at that time we had such clout, because people wanted to play their records.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm using the record side of this. Bless their hearts. A.D. Washington, I set up a meeting with. Gerald Busby, Gene Riggins, and Sharon Hayward. And Sharon Hayward, I think, was my third one. And Gerald Busby, everybody kept saying, have you set up a meeting with Sharon? Yes. And they all met with me just because they wanted to make sure their records were played. Right. But everybody kept referring me to Sharon. And so when I got to Sharon, she says, I would have never thought about you. I see you in radio, but, I wouldn't thought you would do records. She said, kind of like out of sight, out of mind. But now that you're in my face, I can see you doing the record business. And so, if anybody here, we all know Sharon, she was very to the point, succinct, and was like, I need you to put together a plan. And if you can put together a plan and send it to me in 3 days, then I'll consider you. Because she had already been interviewing for this position, and she said it was a product management. The music industry was just getting into product management. I had no clue what it was, had no idea what product management was, so I said, oh, I can definitely do that. Not a problem. So I go back to the radio station, I call all my contacts, I finally find a friend who says, I'm going to send you a marketing plan, and I created this group called Taste. And I put it on a Hershey's bar. I took the Hershey label off. I wrapped it with this label said taste. My assistant at the time had great calligraphy. I said, write this out, taste. I created this whole concept that we'd go to 5 different markets and we'd do taste testing while they sang and this and that and the other. And I mean, I loved it. I take it to FedEx to get it to Sharon. I tear up my brand new 280ZX. I run into a back of a guy going down the hill trying to get to the FedEx place. I was like, okay, I gotta make this. I'm gonna make this time. So I get out the car, I play girl. I did play my whole feminine thing, like, oh my God, I can't believe I hit you. He had a big tank, didn't do anything to his car. And in those days, the Z was so long in the front, it backed up the front of my car. It was still running. I was like, well, if you're fine, can I go? I gotta get to FedEx. He said, sure. I went to FedEx, sent off the plan, went to the mechanic, told him I messed up my car, could he fix it? I'm thinking to myself, I have got to get this job. There's no way I'm not gonna get this job after that. Sharon calls me. This was the funny thing, and I didn't know how flamboyant the record business was, or entertainment was, because I was in radio. Next thing I know, I get a call. There will be a car that will pick you up at 8 a.m. for your 10 a.m. flight to fly down, and then when you get to the airport, you'll see a sign. It'll have your name on it. It'll bring you to Virgin Records. Then I'm like, oh my God. So I call my mom. I'm big time. They sent in a car for me. I don't even have the job yet. So she was like, ooh, what kind of job is that, right? So we get into all that. And so that's how I got in the record. I ended up meeting with Sharon, Jeff Aroff, and Jordan, who ran Virgin at the time, and didn't know anything about the business. As he said, it was a very complex business. I was thinking, oh my God, they have to do the artwork. There's a production team. I knew nothing. But I said to myself, I can do this. And I remember Sharon saying to me, the only thing she ever said to me, and she's going to kill me for saying it, she's like, do you always dress like this? And I said, excuse me? Because I was so, she said, you always dress up? And she had on some leggings and maybe a t-shirt with her shoulder out or something, And my mom was in HR, so I always had you had to be sitting a certain way. You had to carry an extra pair of pantyhose. That tell you how long that is, just in case you run one. So I was like, well, I don't do a lot of things. I don't do drugs. At the time, I didn't really drink. It's a different story after I spent 16 years. But I said, but I do like clothes. And so, yeah, I like to dress. She said, all right. So they like you. You got the job. I'm like, okay. And then from that point, I think, no lie, that first year, I think I worked every weekend. Because I didn't know what the business was, and I wanted to get in it and do a great job. So I would come in when I didn't have to, just to understand what production was and what a production meeting looked like, and what timing was and what the A&R guy. I didn't know anything. All I knew was the promotion meant. I knew there was a record and they asked us to play it. Everything behind the scenes, and if you understand product management, that meant you had to be on top of all of those things. That was my entree. I worked that whole first year just to get an understanding of all the complexities of the music business. And it was funny because I don't think I ever really liked music to that degree. I liked all the elements. I liked that I could wear this to work and nobody would say anything. And I liked to see an artist that I was able to take, and they had a bag basically off the bus, and then you take them and all of a sudden they're on the MTV Awards or the Soul Train. So for me, I like the music, but I'm not a music aficionado. There's some people who know every song, every beat. I'm like, no. I like the transformation. I like the creation of. I like that there was a lifestyle that was afforded to you that kind of just fit my natural rhythm. If I had to wear a business suit every day, I would just lose my mind. So that's kind of my access into the music industry.
What is wonderful hearing all the stories is that nobody came prepared for the job. Everybody learned on the job. I was in it for 14 years, from the time I was 13 to the time I was 28. And I went from being a gopher at a radio station to moving up to assistant music director, to then becoming music director, then coming out to LA and working at Casablanca and working with Gerald Busby, and having worked at BLS in New York, number one station in the country. We were spoiled. We got to get all the rewards and all the accolades, and then here I come to Los Angeles. I'm working at a record company and nobody's giving me diddly. Being in the R&B department, I started with Eddie Pugh, who left abruptly because he knocked out Bruce Byrd Bruce Byrd was a VIP vice president at Casablanca, said something to him, and he punched him out, and he was gone. And then Gerald Busby came in. And with Eddie, we just stayed in our little office. It was me and Shelley Fowler. We ran the R&B department. We hooked up all the promo people, and we did everything we needed to do, but he didn't have the enthusiasm that when Gerald came in, it became a party. Gerald was like, okay, let's do this and let's do that. And there was just two of us in the office, and Sheila was out doing promotions, but it was just me and Shelley in the office. So here I was, 18 years old, being told, now you got to take the artists around. You got to, and they wouldn't let me in the clubs because I was 18. So I had to say to the people, look, if I don't get in, they don't get in. So what do you want? And I mean, this was like a constant up until I was 20. What I loved about radio and records during that time was that you could come in if you were interested. There were no gatekeepers. So you ready? You ready today? Come on.